How's it going out there, you two? Alright, so listen. I know that it's been a good long while now since I've brought any sort of significant Wonderhaven updates to the channel. Just like I know that my sort of chapter-by-chapter posts for social media have admittedly become pretty far and in between. The good news, however, is that I have returned, if only for the next few minutes, to bring you some good and, quite frankly, exciting news. Which is that from this moment on, as this is being recorded, we are finally able to move forward into the final third of this book. In layman's terms, that's the last 8 chapters of the book. But why am I bothering to tell you this? Why have I stopped doing what I'm doing to turn on a camera instead of just keeping my nose to the grindstone as I've been doing for, I don't know, the last year or so, and doing everything that needs to be done to just hammer this baby out and be done with it and move on. And I guess it's because, to me personally, this last chunk is pretty significant. It's quite special in a way. And I guess in a roundabout way, this update is supposed to serve as a surprise announcement that these remaining 8 chapters are going to primarily focus around the character of Alice. Of course, I have a pretty consistent history of being candid with the fact that I want to distance myself from the character of Alice and respectfully leave that story, her original adventure through Wonderland, leave that where it is, untouched, and really kind of only depend on it in such a way that it helps guide Alan through his journey and really kind of propels the series as a whole into its own. And going into this, I still believe that that is holding true. I'd still very much consider that to be the case. My thought on it, however, is that if we are going to write a prequel story for Wonderland properly, Alice needs to fit in there somewhere, right? In the grand scheme of things, in the overall timeline of things, however you want to state it, she's got a story in there somewhere. And quite frankly, I've arrived at a point in this book where I could really do something with it. I could use it. I need it. Because kind of the running theme throughout this series has always been the dual realities concept. You know, is Wonderland real or is it not? Is it nothing but a fictitious mental disorder. Um, you know, a concept that deals with a very dark and twisted psychological element. And I've done one part of that. In the first two segments is where I've really delved into the fantasy element with all of the Wonderland lore and kind of doing all the things that I need to do to kind of bring to light the idea that if Wonderland was its own physical place, an entity out there somewhere in the universe that isn't made up and isn't a psychological coping mechanism, what would it look like? How would it function? What would the world building and the lore building look like? I've done all that. And as far as I'm concerned, I've done everything that I can do with this book as far as that side of it is. So I'm really looking to this last segment with Alice to be my anchor to that opposing reality. Now, I obviously don't want to say too much and spoil a lot of my ideas on the subject, but I will say that I've found that, first and foremost, the most important thing to expand on is the concept of Alice and family post-tragedy, post-fire. Quite frankly, just because we don't know very much. The narrative that we have for her is that she, a young girl, an assumed only child, survived a house fire that orphaned her. And then from there, we know that she had maybe tried to tell people about Wonderland, explain what she was, what it is, and what she experienced and things. And her family, of course, didn't take to it very kindly. And they had her committed to the same mental health facility that Alan is stuck in. And from there, basically, they abandoned her and intentionally kind of forgot about her, and we can presume that she just spent the rest of her life there and died cold and alone. Super dark, super depressing, I know, but that is the narrative as it stands so far. And I will say that just before I turned on this camera to film this, I had done the research and note-taking on this particular subject to kind of make sure that I was caught up and remembered everything properly, make sure that everything lined up. And fortunately, I think that the things that I'm planning and kind of playing with are going to work out. I didn't see very much, or if anything, that would contradict or complicate the overall ideas that I have swimming around up here. I will say that the one kind of tidbit I found, or thought of is that her being an only child is a problem. The idea that she, being an only child, means that she can't biologically be connected to Alan. Which, of course, isn't a huge deal, because when I was thinking of, like, how do I work through this, how do I fix it, and how do I rebuild the connective tissues between characters that I need. Obviously, the idea of adoption came up, right? The only issue with that being that it is stated that she is Alice Liddel. She is the Alice Liddel that everybody knows and we all kind of adore. So that, of course, led me down this crazy, convoluted rabbit hole that, like, okay, so she needs to be adopted, but she's already a Liddel, so maybe she kept the Liddel, she got adopted, but she kept the Liddel name as kind of a respect to the family that she lost, and maybe somewhere in the generations between her and Alan, a family member kind of sympathized with her and kind of was captivated with her. Maybe they changed their name out of respect for her, and thus led to Alan Liddel from Alice Liddel, but that was just too complicated for me. And it took me far longer than I'd like to admit to string together a far easier concept, which is maybe instead of being born a Liddel, she became one. What if before she became the Alice Liddel that we know, she didn't start that way. She was something else, someone else. This, of course, would mean, and I think this is going to be the primary struggle that I have with working with the segment, is that I need to come up with not only a name for her original family, but I also need to come up with an entirely different cast of characters. Because for the most part, this is a section, this is a story, I'll say loosely connected to the other two segments, but in the long run, I guess it's got very little to do with him. So it means basically I'm starting from the ground up. I'm starting from zero and have to create an entirely new cast of characters to fit in Alice's part of the world. And of course, the first name that kind of automatically popped into my head was Kingsley, Alice Kingsley, which, because I really like that sound, that name. It's got a nice sound to it, a nice ring to it, it flows, I like it. Issue there is that I don't want to use the name that Tim Burton did in his movie, so have to cross that off of my list of potential names. I'm just hoping that this process of creating these characters and coming up with the names doesn't get too complicated and too time consuming, because it could. And I think I'm going to be facing possible, the next few weeks minimum, just kind of character building and playing around with personalities and pretty much everything I've got to do when introducing these brand new characters. And like I said, I'm really starting from square one. Don't really have any idea what I'm going to do or where I'm going with it. And maybe, this is an instance where I can involve you, the community. So if you're watching this video in time, feel free to comment some last name ideas for me. Something that, of course, flows with Alice. I'm kind of unsure whether or not I'm going to dive into her parents too far. There's the possibility that I will, but for right now, let's just focus on what her last name is before she gets to be Alice Liddel. That is priority number one. That square one, that is where we need to start. So if you're seeing this in closing, I guess, feel free to drop me suggestions. And it's very likely that if you offer up one that I like, that's the one I'll pick. And then your suggestion will appear in this book and forever be part of my Alice's lore, the lore of the Allen series. So I guess that's it, guys. You probably won't see me again until the book is done. So wish me luck. Get excited. Like I said, feel free to help me out here to get some ideas flowing. And I'll see you hopefully soon. Alright, guys. Take care.